Hi everyone, my name is Amber. Welcome back to my booktube channel. This is my December wrap up. So this is going to actually be quite a short one because I only read I think 7 or 8 books in December, and that might seem a lot to some people. It might seem really good to some people, but that's probably about half of what I usually read. The reason for this is that I got very sick on the 1st of December, which was such bad timing, and that carried on all the way up until pretty much Christmas. So I went 2 whole weeks without reading anything at all, and it was the most miserable 2 weeks of my life. I can't remember the last time I was that ill, and I can't remember the last time I didn't read for 2 full weeks. But I did get to read some really good books in December. I chose some really good ones once I got out of my sickness reading slump. I don't think you can really call it a reading slump either. It was just that I was too ill to concentrate, even though I really did want to read. So first of all, full disclosure, I finished off Dune in December. Even though I said that I finished it in November, it was because I thought I was going to, but then I still had like 20 pages left. So I quickly finished that one off, gave it 3 stars. I talk about that more in my November wrap up, but it's not my favourite book. There's a lot of showing instead of telling. It's very political, but I don't think it's political in a good way, in my opinion. I'm fine with there not being action in my sci-fi books, but if you're going to get political, I think you also need to flesh out the characters who are doing all of that politicising. I don't think Frank Herbert did a great job. It also got really weird towards the end, and I just wasn't a fan, so I gave it 3 stars because I appreciate the world building and the impact it has had on the genre. I don't think it's necessarily a bad book, it's just not my kind of thing. Anyway, moving on. I actually read a ton of sci-fi because I don't know why, I seem to be in the sci-fi mood. First of all, I read Winter's Orbit, which I talked about in my best books of the year video, which went up a couple of days ago. This one is adult sci-fi. It's about 2 guys who are put into a political marriage. So one of the guys, whose name was Janan, let's say Janan, who is married to a guy called Prince Tam. Tam is killed. Janan has to marry his cousin, who's called Keem. The reasons for this are very, I wouldn't say complicated, but you need to read the book to find out. Basically, it's a political marriage and neither of them expected to be in this relationship so suddenly, especially because Janan was originally obviously married to Tam, Keem's cousin. So Keem is very surprised and he wasn't exactly ready to marry, but because his grandmother needs him to do this or wants him to do this for the good of the empire or whatever, Keem does so and he starts to get to know Janan. Reading about those 2 getting to know one another was the most adorable thing I've ever read in a sci-fi book. It was so sweet, and I love the 2 of them together. Even though it was a political marriage, both of them are very respectful. One of them has been in an abusive relationship before. I won't say which one it is because you get a vibe from the start, at least I did. I started to see the signs, and then gradually the other person starts to learn that that's what's happened to his husband, and he starts to understand him a lot more, and then he finds out the truth. So that's a whole like sort of subplot, I suppose. The actual plot of this book, apart from the 2 getting married, is Prince Tam's death may not be as simple as they initially thought. So the 2 of them need to solve a murder to prevent a war. Neither side is happy with the other, and this alliance between the planets is very kind of on a knife's edge, I would say. I didn't really get a tense feeling from this book as you normally would from a book about societies that could be going to war with one another. I just found it very adorable and cute. I knew where it was going to go in some places, in other places it was quite surprising. I really like the world building. So this isn't very like sciencey science fiction, it's more about the 2 of them trying to prevent war and solving a murder, so it's sort of like a mystery sci-fi. But nevertheless, I really enjoyed reading about the world building, and I'm hoping this author will bring out more in this world. I don't think she's planning, or they are planning to revisit these 2 characters, but I think they might be writing more in this universe or galaxy. At least I hope so, because I very much enjoyed reading about the different alliances and the different planets and different things that were going on. It was just really cool. I also really enjoyed the humour in this. So there were some parts where I can't remember exactly what it was, but there were creatures on Keem's planet that they had named after creatures on our Earth, but they were entirely different. So for example, like they would say there was a bear, and the bear would have like 8 legs and would be giant and would scuttle along. I found that very amusing. I thought it was really cool. There were a lot of references like that I found very funny and amusing. I gave this one 4 stars. Still on my sci-fi kick, I read The Calculating Stars. This one is more based on Earth actually rather than in space, but I think they're kind of getting there. So the series is called Lady Astronaut Chronicles or something. This is the first book in the series. The plot of this one is that in 1952 a meteorite hits Earth just off the coast of Washington and basically destroys the East Coast. Also has an impact on weather patterns and on life on Earth all over. And the scientists in this book, the main character is one of those scientists or mathematicians I think, and her husband is a scientist who worked on aerodynamics or something. Basically, they're very smart people and they figure out that the Earth doesn't really have much longer to be able to sustain human life. And so they basically kickstart the space race a decade earlier than it actually happened in our real timeline. And of course, because it's the 1950s, no one, or rather the higher ups, don't really want women going off into space because they need to protect their girls. But the main character is kind of like, I'm the mathematician behind all of this, I'm a pilot already, I was a pilot during World War II, I deserve this, I want to go to space. So the entire first book, I haven't read the second yet, is about the main character whose name was Elmer, basically fighting for equality, the right to be able to go to space or at least be involved in these space missions like her colleagues are, but she's not allowed to because she's a woman. The main character, Alma, is also Jewish, so that was some representation in there. And the girls, the women who get together, are from a range of backgrounds. Some of them are black as well, so that also comes into it because obviously the black women are treated differently to the white women. I really enjoyed this one. It was a very fast read and I really enjoyed reading about the apocalyptic events that happened in it and the changes in the weather patterns, because that's something that really intrigues me. I found it very thrilling to think about how Earth didn't really have much longer, or humans didn't really have much longer on Earth rather. There was kind of a ticking clock on humanity. So I'm really looking forward to reading the sequel. I don't know when I'm going to get my hands on it, probably not anytime soon. I do need to recap this book and then hopefully I will remember as much as I can for the sequel when I finally read it. It's called The Fated Sky and I'm hoping we're going to get up into space for this one. I don't know if it's going to be a longer series either. I don't know if it's just a duology, I'm not sure. But I do know that this one released quite a while ago. I believe it was in like 2018 maybe. So because it released so long ago, I'm not sure it's going to be a longer series than 2 books, but I'm looking forward to reading the second one. I gave this one 3.5 stars. Again, with the sci-fi thing, this is my last one for this month. I read Goldilocks, which was actually quite similar to the Calculating Stars. So this is about a space mission. There's an all-female crew who have stolen a spaceship and gone off into space to colonize a new planet. Certain things start going wrong on this spaceship as well, and the main character, Naomi, has to figure out what exactly is going wrong and who is sabotaging them because she thinks it's someone on this spaceship. So it's a bit of a thriller in that sense, but the main genre is definitely sci-fi. And it's all about kind of family and hope as well. I would say this book's quite hopeful. It's a very short book. It didn't take me long to read at all. There were some flashbacks that I didn't find very interesting. I think it was supposed to help build up the characters and their backgrounds, which made sense, but I was more interested in what was going on the ship because there were some really interesting things happening and it was quite thrilling up there. But the flashbacks were back down on Earth. There's also a virus in this one I should probably mention that is about to wipe out all of humanity. So if you're sensitive to reading about that at this current time, maybe don't pick this one up just yet. But I gave this one 3.5 stars because it was very fast paced. I really liked reading about the characters in space and I was rooting for most of them, I would say. Just most of them, not quite all of them. Okay, and then changing the tone a little bit, I reread 2 books because I wanted to recap them and then finish off the series at some point in the near future. That is Gravesight by Charlene Harris and Grave Surprise. This is book 1 and book 2 in the Harper Connolly series, and these are urban fantasy. So basically the main character, Harper, was struck by lightning when she was a teenager, and ever since then she has been able to detect dead bodies so she can sense them. She has kind of built a career around this and people hire her as kind of like a freelance detective body finder sort of thing, and she keeps getting called to these small towns in the south where there's a ton of drama. So this first one follows Harper and her stepbrother. So Harper and Tolliver go to this small town and there's a ton of drama and incestuous relationships going on. It's basically like a soap opera in my opinion, but I really enjoyed the mystery aspect. I read this when I was probably about 10 years ago, I'm not quite sure, because I wanted to check out more of her books after reading the first few Sookie Stackhouse books. These ones, I believe, are so much better than the Sookie Stackhouse books. I really enjoy reading about Harper Connolly's powers. I think that's quite interesting, and of course I really like detective and mystery stories when it's not about a detective, and Harper Connolly is just kind of on the edge of being a detective or private investigator. It's not quite as annoying as I normally find them. It's very fast paced, it's under 300 pages, so if you're into urban fantasy then I would highly recommend checking this one out. I will say that it's obviously not very modern. I can't remember if there were any kind of awful comments made, but I feel like some of the subtext might have been there. I'm not quite sure, I can't remember. So I gave the first one 4 stars and I gave this one 3 stars because I noticed reading them back to back that this one's actually quite poorly edited. So on the back of this one there's a character mentioned who's called Clive Nunley, but in the book he's actually called Clyde. which is a bit different. It's not like a big issue, but it annoyed me a bit. Also in this book, I think the author mentions a different relationship that Harper has with another character. There is a character who's supposed to be Tolliver's auntie, I think, and in this book she is Harper's biological auntie. And again, it's not a big deal, it's just a bit annoying because I was reading the two back to back and I kind of took a moment and was like, wait, no, that's not what she said earlier. But nevertheless, I gave this one 3 stars, so I enjoyed it. I just thought some parts of it were very, I don't know, again, it was not very modern, and I didn't like the reveal at the end of this one, the whole mystery of it. I can't say what it is in case you do, on the off chance, pick this book up. I didn't like the reveal and the motivation behind the reveal either, or the motivation behind who did it. And then finally, my last book of December, my final book of the year, was The Holiday Swap. So I was going to read this one and The Holiday Switch as well, but again, I wasn't feeling great over Christmas. I was much better than I was, but I still wasn't 100%. And so I only read this one, but this one is about 2 twins. They're identical. One runs the family bakery and the other is on a cooking show in California. It's basically like the Great British Bake Off, but American. And the one who is on this cooking show falls over and hits her head and she gets concussion. She loses her taste and sense of smell, which means she can't judge for this cooking show. So she swaps with her twin sister and she goes to work at the bakery, and the twin sister comes to work on the show in California, which is the most ridiculous idea, but it worked. I gave this one 3 stars. It's a romance book and I don't usually vibe with those, so I didn't love it, but it was very enjoyable and it was a really easy one to read over Christmas while I was sort of dealing with family stuff as well and seeing a load of family members and traveling. So it was a good one to pick up, I think, for that reason. And some parts were very funny. I actually really enjoyed the romances in this book as well. The twins both get a love interest in this book and I liked them. Normally I don't really enjoy the male characters in romance books, which is why I have such an issue with them half the time. But I really enjoyed both of these. I thought they were lovely people and I was rooting for both relationships. I just found the concept a little bit silly, which is fine. Like, that's not the end of the world, and I think it's supposed to be, it's a romance book, so it was supposed to be like a rom-com silly sort of plot, so I enjoyed it. So that does mean that I enjoyed all of the books that I read in December. I read some really good ones like Winter's Orbit, and I read some just good ones like The Holiday Swap or Grave Surprise. I'm a little bit sad that I didn't get to read more. I had really optimistic December TBR goals and I was hoping to read down my books bought in 2021 pile, but I didn't really get to many of them. I think I got through 4 including Dune, so it's not terrible. They amounted to half of the books that I was reading, but I was hoping to read more and really tackle that pile in December because of all the time off that I had. But my time off was kind of ruined by the illness that I contracted, so a bit disappointing, but overall it was still a really good month and I really enjoyed the books that I read. Thank you so much for watching this video. I'll be back in a couple of days with another one. Let me know what your favourite book of December was down in the comments below and I'll speak to you all in the next one. Bye!